ECA. Hello, welcome.
Hi,
Thank you
sorry.
for joining us. Hi, Robert. Nice to see you again.
Yeah.
Hi, Mana. Nice to see you again.
Hi.
Apichaya, welcome. Beautiful to see you as well. Bárbara, hola, ¿qué tal? Hi. James, welcome back. I think we have James and Barbara connecting.
Hi.
Then, hi, Lawrence. Hi. Lawrence is also connecting.
Hello.
Hi, Bárbara. Hola, ¿qué tal?
Good morning.
Good morning. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Here, it's in Hong Kong, it's just pouring rain. Crazy.
Oh.
Yeah, thunderstorm. Yeah, it's been a very wet week. Hi, James. Hello, welcome back.
Hi there. Sorry.
Nice to see you.
Unmuting.
No, it's okay. Thank you for joining. So,
Sorry for being
sorry?
intermittent. Sorry for being intermittent in my joining.
No worries, no worries. We know, I think June is a busy month, very busy month, ahead of the summer holidays. So thank you everyone for being here today, for making the time to join. This is, as you know, the last session of this ECA deep dive. And so we're gonna get cracking while others join. And I think by now, for those of you who have managed to come in the subsequent sessions, you probably get the rhythm of how these sessions go. And you know that we always share this reminder of how important it is to share your experiences, show up during this session. It's all about learning from each other, and myself as a facilitator, and even the effective collaborative action methodology, we're just instruments and catalyzers, but the actual learning happen in the exchange and in the conversations that we have. So thank you for your ongoing participation and sharing. And although it is the last session that we are having, this is an ongoing journey. And so we, as I mentioned, part of this process is for us to follow up. For those who are interested and see the benefit or the need, we can have one-on-one coaching sessions. I've actually had today a wonderful session with the Indonesia team that's working on the implementation of the National Action Plan for Sustainable Palm Oil. And we had a work session because they're working on the agenda for an upcoming multi-stakeholder event. And so we came up with this learning. We really realized that the best way of crystallizing the learnings of the deep dive is to go that step further of having another iteration where we can actually work on this sort of case clinic approach of applying ECA to the real life work that needs to be done. And it's very nice to see how the learning evolves, like another iteration. So yeah, just an invitation to consider that if you find it useful or helpful. And we will go into our one breath check-in. For those who haven't been able to join before, our one breath check-in is basically, you can say whatever fits into one breath, so that we can keep it concise, but at the same time, we get the opportunity to hear from everyone. And the prompting question for today's check-in is, what are you bringing with you to this session today, in the acknowledgement that it is the last session of the program? So I'm just going to start just to offer an example. I'm bringing a mixture of happiness, excitement, and a tad bit of sadness, because I feel that every time that I run a cohort of this program, going through this with a group of people through 4 sessions creates a very lovely group. And so saying goodbye to that opportunity to meet you on a weekly basis makes me feel sad, but it also makes me feel happy that you are now taking this into the world and into your work. And that was a very long breath. So don't take me as an example of that. But I'll pass it on to Barbara, please.
Hey, thank you. I have very similar feelings, actually. It was very beautiful discussing different dimensions together, understanding deeper dimensions that I've been encountered with, but together it helped me to understand better. So I am grateful. Thank you very much, and precisely to you, because I believe you are a great facilitator. Thank you. And the rest, to have the opportunity to meet you online, but I don't know you very much, but with some of you already feel like, yeah, we can continue, and I feel exactly a link, very strong link. It's beautiful. So I feel like this. And I will pass it to Apichaya.
Hi, thank you, Barbara. I hope everyone can hear me well. I'm in a loud place. In one breath, I think today, similar to you, I'm bringing my coffee, and I think I'm going to really miss this kind of setup of meeting. And this is very helpful in terms of I have companion, I have friends in this difficult journey. And when you guys share some techniques, I think this kind of thing needs to happen a lot more in our own organization, in our own team. And I'm so grateful that I have this opportunity to learn from you guys. And hope this will not be the last time. And I don't know how we can keep the conversation going among us in terms of sharing techniques, experience. But thank you very much for Maria, for Soleil and everyone for joining. I'm going to pass it on to Lawrence.
And everyone, of course, that we've met online, and yeah, it's been some nice sessions, and like the others have said before me, it seems almost like I've known these people for much longer. So number one is to appreciate the chance to be part of these sessions, and to say that today I bring in, it's a very warm weather here in Uganda, Kampala, and I bring in the anxiety of saying, okay, it's been a great journey, we've completed this, and looking forward for what we can do moving forward, and how this can keep going. So I'd like to then pass this on to Robert.
Yeah, thank you, Lawrence. Yeah, I have similar feeling actually. I thought that today's session is not the last one, because I think that we will have 5 sessions. But then I read again, oh yeah, this is the last one, the last session that we have during this opportunity. Well, I'm happy to be part of this process, and I'm really thankful because I got the invitation, although I'm not the part of any UNDP team working on food and commodity community practice, but I learned a lot from this, and I also already signed up to the committee of practice through the portal. And thank you very much. I think we will have wonderful opportunities after this series of sessions. I already noticed in the chat we will have an alumni gathering through 2 or 3 months later. That will be good to share. Keep on exchange our learning or also experience. Now I would like to pass to who else here? Naram Mandak Batar. I hope I pronounce your name correctly.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm very grateful that I was able to attend this session because I just came from came to this session in the last 2 training. So it's very grateful for me too, because well, we're going to organize a training module for UNDP and UNDP staff and project implementation unit. So I will going to use this experience to teach my colleagues. So very grateful to be here. So I think I'm going to call Uchi, Dominic.
Good morning, afternoon, evening. I'm Dominic from Nigeria. Ken before the section started, but I believe we are on introduction and the effects of the program. Really thank the organizer for this beautiful get together to brainstorm about effective, collaborative, and co-designing. It's been very wonderful. I wish to extend this kind of knowledge to my own and training experience as a student as well. So thank you. I don't know who is the next person, please.
Thank you very much. I think James and Federica. So James, over to you.
Thank you, everybody. Well, I'm coming with a little regret that I haven't attended more of the sessions. Too many other things happening and getting pushed in the way of important learning, but I'm leaving feeling that I've opened door to learn from the experience of all of the group, but also thanking those who have organized this. It's given me access to lots of materials, lots of other experiences which I can apply to my work. So thank you very much.
Thank you, James. And over to you, Federica. In a
Thank you.
very special context, Federica, as well for you, I guess. Your last ECA deep dive.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Sole. So indeed, like similar to what has been said, but I also have mixed feeling. I'm really grateful and happy to be here, especially because from my point of view, this is a place in which I can learn also from you all, as well as I'm also feeling that we created a link beyond like the work environment, right? I already know that on Thursday morning CT, in my case, I will be in the ECA program and happy to kick off the day in this way. And I also thought that next week, I mean, even though I'm the organizer, like I'm feeling that my schedule got used to it. So this is a really positive sign. But a bit sad at the same time, because yes, indeed, as Sode mentioned, unfortunately, at least as an organizer point of view, this is my last ECA deep dive sessions or program, but hope to keep in contact and see you all in the future. And over to you, Sole.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Federica. Thank you, everyone, for your beautiful sharing. And as I said, you know, these sessions are what they are thanks to you, to your engagement, to your participation, your sharing. So, yeah. Thank you very much. I'm very touched by everyone's words. So, in the spirit of doing a bit of a recap journey for those who are coming, maybe having joined 1 or 2 sessions, on session 1, so this is the 4th session, the last one, we had 4 modules. On session 1, we looked at the introduction and key elements of the effective collaborative action methodology. We focused on systems leadership, thinking and change as the topic that we unpacked, and we covered the 3 key ideas around this. We looked at how we work with complexity in practice, both by sharing a case study, but also by applying the key ideas and practices to your individual case studies that you chose to bring into this course. Then on session 2, we focused on, we started off by having an individual and collective sense making of what is good collaboration under the 4 agendas, the CALM acronym, if you remember, connecting, aligning, learning, and making. And we also looked at the 10 key principles of effective collaborative action and how they can guide the conversation and the reflection on what is good collaboration and what are the conditions limiting, getting in the way of good collaboration, and what are the what we call signals of change. So the ideas or moments, things that we can notice in the process of a multi-stakeholder collaboration that show us that we are progressing in the right direction. So that's the limiting conditions, early signals of change. And we also looked at what are the key tools and practices that we can implement to overcome the limiting conditions and move into progress. From a thematic perspective, we looked at working with power and the 3 key ideas. We did the privilege exercise, and then we looked at implementing all of this in your individual case studies on your Google file. So hopefully by now you kind of have that journey of what you've been doing and how you've been applying effective collaborative action to your particular case study. And the suggestion is, you know, keep that at hand, because you might, maybe in 1 week or in 3 months or in 6 months, find it useful again if you are faced with a situation of wanting to apply effective collaborative action. Then last week, we covered diversity and social inclusion. We looked at also gender equality from the perspective of the limiting conditions and signals of change. We looked at effective communication as an essential practice for multi-stakeholder collaborative processes. And we practiced using one of the many tools that are available for effective communication, which is the cultural mapping tool. And then we looked at, again, doing that practical application on the individual case studies. So now we're getting to module 4, which is, if you remember on module 1, for those of you who managed to join, we talked about how this program is structured in a way that invites you to participate in 2 roles. As a recipient of the ECA methodology, but also as an implementer of it. So as a participant and learner of the training, and as a potential facilitator and convener and moderator of collaborative processes. So in this last module, we are going to go back to that balcony view that we talked about from a facilitation and convening point of view, and look at effective collaborative action from the perspective of the facilitator. How do we facilitate a multi-stakeholder collaborative processes? What are the key ideas behind? And if you manage to see the videos, you probably already have in mind some of those key ideas. So we're going to get cracking now into the content. And as we normally do in these sessions, now we have the paired check-in, where we go deeper into a question that is relevant to the topic of the day. And the question today is, how would you describe yourself as a facilitator or convener? And if it helps and you have that possibility, just think of a concrete example when you had to convene or facilitate a group of people through a meeting, a workshop, or a session. And if you haven't done that, then, you know, just think about yourself in terms of imagining yourself in that role. We're going to take 10 minutes, 4 minutes for each person to share. As we always say, it doesn't need to be sophisticated. It doesn't need to be elaborated, just whatever comes. And for the listener to practice deep listening, which is just taking in what the person is speaking, is sharing. You don't need to ask questions or give feedback or share any ideas or solutions. So we are going to move into the breakouts. It's 25 past the hour, so for 10 minutes. And then we will come back and do some sense making together. Thank you, Federica, for sending us to the breakout groups.
My pleasure.
We are all here. Back to the plenary. And, oh, sorry. Okay, so before we move into the key ideas, the 3 key ideas, I'm wondering what came up for you at the paired check-in. How did you describe yourself as a facilitator, convener?
You know, sorry, on this thing, you act like a mother who tells the children, you go talk, and then when you come back, say, what did you talk about?
Yes, it does have a little bit of that energy, right?
Yes, so
I want you to have your own conversations, but I want to know about them.
Yes, so I think one of the things that we did find is in facilitation, most times we in our discussion is you build a skill over time, and you continuously look at some mistakes that you make. And if you never ever look at those mistakes, then you can't get any better. And sometimes it's good to ask people, how was it? And if that helps you get better. And for us, that's what we talked about.
Did you manage to talk about any particular examples of mistakes that you've made in the past?
Yes. I mean, I learned, I was part of a team that in 2012 was trained by the Ministry of Finance on facilitation, because we would go to the field to support the poverty status report, data collection, and engagement at community level. And then after the training, we were taken to a community to pretest our skills. And I was selected as the first person to ask. And the first question was, who is a poor person? And so when I asked that question, who is a poor person in this community, it was my first time ever. And I was attacked by everyone. The crowd went crazy and almost started throwing things at me. So the trainers, one of the trainers had to come in and so on, because these people are saying, who's poor? The poor person is you. But I was to ask the question given to me. And it started so bad. I was scared that I would even be thrown off the team and so on. But for me, that's where it started. And over time, I've improved myself and certainly become an MC for most events that we do at work. And I facilitate so many discussions in the places where I work. But that's how bad I started.
That is amazing, Lawrence. Thank you so much for sharing. Huge learning, right? But also congratulations on the persistence and the courage to continue, because many other people might have just said, okay, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not exposing myself to, and you just took it as learning and continued, and now you are an amazing facilitator. So thank you.
Yes.
Very inspiring.
Thank you.
Anything else from that group that you would like to share? Barbara or James?
I'll start and the others can add, because I'll certainly forget something. I think we all talked about the fact that a facility is supposed to be neutral, but you actually never are. You always have a point of view. We didn't discuss what you do about it, but I think you have to at least present yourself as neutral, but explain your background and, you know, what you bring to a discussion. The other thing we discussed was that often the wrong, or rather not the right people are in the room. You can facilitate a discussion, but the decision makers are not there, and then refuse the decision or don't provide the funding to implement the solution that the wonderful solution that you've come up with that you think is going to help everybody. And then you're left feeling somehow like you've failed the stakeholders that you were with. So, the other important point, I think, was needing to be sensitive to the social and economic context that you're in. And I think what Lawrence has just said illustrates that well. But we all come into situations where we are not actually part of the local culture, and acknowledging it and knowing how, bringing people who can help navigate and that local people can relate to is very important. I'm sure I've missed things the others would like to add.
Thank you so much. Fantastic. Thank you, James. What about the other? Oh, yes, Barbara, please go ahead.
I just said he explained everything very well. I just wanted to say that it's just a question also for you, because I'm a human rights lawyer. When I facilitate, for me it's very, I present myself as I am, and I bring this approach, and which I think is good. But then again, we have to agree on that, you know, because if they don't agree on that, I will be myself in a conflict situation, you know, because, you know, Nara was saying that it's very important so her role will be to include the communities. But when I facilitate, I already include them, you know, and I make sure that they are going to participate in the right manner. And if I see that they don't, I'm going to do something to ensure that. So sometimes I have to explain who I am, because it changes completely, no? Like if the facilitator has this approach that someone will try to include it. I have sometimes both, you know, I am, and I have this person to ensure. But when the stakeholder don't understand these dimensions, they can see it as a threat. So I have to be careful, and yeah. So just to say, that's my own experience and the challenge at the same time sometimes.
Yeah, thank you very much. Super relevant, and we will talk about this idea of neutrality and what does it mean to show up as a facilitator, and how, and the different ways. There's no one size fits all. That's also another thing to bear in mind. And there's something about being true to oneself. There's no one best way of facilitating. I think there's different facilitators for different circumstances, right? And it might be the case that we are stronger in certain contexts as facilitators, and other facilitators are stronger in other contexts. So how do we open up that honest conversation about whether we are the right facilitators for that right space? All of this is so fascinating and so important. So thank you for bringing it up. Any other comments from any other group that someone may wish to share or say?
Yes.
Yes, Uchi.
Yeah, we discussed about communication tools, how to demonstrate so that the participant we really understand. Because when you are facilitating, you are not on the field for the implementation. So trying to create such tools so that farmers we understand most of the times is very difficult. Because, for example, if you are telling farmer to apply fertilizer like 4 bags a hectare, now when you are facilitating, it's very difficult to practicalize it. That farmers, this is how you can only say in theory. So now in that situation, you try to improvise some certain aspects so that you can use objects and then demonstrate so that the farmers will even understand. And you can even create some of the objects within. You can even draw on the board. You can call participants also to demonstrate within themselves, and then they understand, because it's a kind of teamwork. It's a facilitating is more of a teamwork within. Thank you. That is the little I have to say.
Thank you, Uchi, so much. And it is such a crucial point. And we've talked about this, I think, in the past sessions, right? This idea of the outcome of this, of any multi-stakeholder collaboration, is ultimately a shared responsibility. It's not the responsibility of the facilitator to make it successful. The facilitator is an instrument, is a catalyzer, is a convener, a shepherd, if you want. You know, there are different metaphors that may fit the role of the facilitator. And I think this is something that is very important to say very explicitly and straight on, because people unconsciously set a lot of expectations towards the person that's front stage in a way. And so aligning those expectations is one, I would say, fundamental first step in any facilitation, not just in a multi-stakeholder collaborative process, but in a multi-stakeholder collaborative process, it is even more important to do that, because it cannot work without everyone's engagement and involvement and participation. So it is a teamwork, definitely. Facilitating is a teamwork. Excellent. Well, thanks a lot for all the amazing reflections and inputs that you've shared. I'm going to share now my screen so that we can continue going through the 3 key ideas. And if you manage to see the videos, you probably have a bit more context on these ideas. If you haven't done so yet, feel free to do it after this session, because it might help you elaborate your own thinking about what we are discussing. But the 3 key ideas that we've collected from experience and from research in terms of facilitating in multi-stakeholder collaborative processes is that first, the facilitator is a role model of trust building. Yeah. And this works at 3 levels, right? How we show up for ourselves and our co-facilitators. So this idea that Barbara brought in, in terms of how am I authentic and at the same time flexible to the needs of my audience and my colleagues that are co-facilitating with me? How do I manage those spaces? Also, how we show up in the process, and how we show up to other participants, our level of presence, of attention, how caring and empathetic we are. This notion of suspending judgment is really, really important. So when we talk about neutrality, and we will see that in the different styles of facilitation, as James was pointing out, and others did so as well, there is no such thing as neutrality. We are human beings. We are we see the world through the lenses of our own mindsets, paradigms, conscious and unconscious biases. So I think the right framing shouldn't be neutrality, but rather suspending judgment. How do we notice our own assumptions and our own processes? How do we exercise that self-awareness and hold it without, imposing it or bringing it into our participants and co-facilitators? How do we name it as well? How do we name, this is what I'm seeing, this is what I'm noticing. Is anyone else noticing the same thing? Are you experiencing this differently? So opening up things for conversation, again, in the spirit of facilitating as a teamwork. The second idea, and we will go into more granularity on each one of these, but the second idea that also comes from the work of Adam Kahane. If any of you are familiar with him, he's the founder of Rios Partners. They are experts in multi-stakeholder facilitation of very, very complex processes. They've supported peace building in Colombia, post-apartheid dialogues in South Africa, and many other type of interventions that were significantly impactful. And basically, he talks about understanding from a facilitator point of view as well, that no one can be forced into collaboration. You can't force people to collaborate. Collaboration is one of many options for stakeholders. And it is so important to acknowledge this as a facilitator, because otherwise we may run the risk of directing our facilitation towards trying to convince each and every stakeholder about what they need to do, as opposed to, again, suspending judgment and noticing what's happening and working with what is happening, with what the group is trying to communicate and convey. And he talks about 4 ways of dealing with problematic solution, collaboration being one of them, but there's also forcing, adapting, and exit. And then the third key idea is that as a facilitator, asking ourselves, how can I be helpful to this group? And going back to that point of neutrality, Adam Kahane, also in his work on facilitating breakthrough, talks about navigating through vertical and horizontal facilitation. So we're going to unpack this a little bit more. When it comes to this first key idea, the facilitator as a role model for trust building, we talked about those 3 levels. And these are some ideas of the things that we can bring in. Practices, again, not exclusive, just ideas, but how do we show up to ourselves and to our co-facilitators? Preparation is key. So spending time on it. Visualization is key as a facilitator, trying to picture yourself in that situation, possible scenarios of what could happen, how would you respond, asking yourself, what do you need to feel safe and to trust yourself as a facilitator in this intervention. And that is a conversation that's quite useful to have with other co-facilitators as well. Working closely with your co-facilitators before the process and the event takes place, in the design, in the split of tasks, roles. Some facilitators welcome co-facilitation on the spot more than others. So there's also this conversation around styles, and discuss and agree how you will work together, how you will support each other. And again, these are all ideas. I'm sure from your experience, you have many more, and we are going to cover those soon. In terms of the process, think of trust building activities when designing the process, paying conscious attention to flexibility between following the agenda and following the energy of the group, what needs to be achieved and how. And oftentimes, successful facilitation can be seen when you don't necessarily fully follow the agenda, but rather allow for that emergence to happen and respond to it. Set 1 or 2 clear objectives, so things that need to be achieved. Because obviously, and we are going to talk about this as well in the vertical and horizontal facilitation, we need to manage that tension between structure and lack of structure, and none of the polarities in their full expression might be beneficial, but it's rather the iteration, right? The cycling back and forth between structure and emergence. So that speaks to the last point around expecting movement between divergence and convergence. So going broad, and then bringing people back in, and then going broad and bringing people back in. Yeah, so zooming in and out in processes. So for a multi-stakeholder collaborative process, this can look like, okay, how are big questions like, how are we going to work together? What is our shared vision? How do we build trust? You go big, and then, okay, how does an action plan look like? What's our roadmap? What are our next steps? That goes back to convergence. For participants, co-design and co-create with them as much as possible, empower them, be explicit about how the result of the intervention is a shared responsibility, be present to and for participants, use deep listening capabilities. And sometimes that's difficult because as a facilitator, you kind of have to be present in the moment, but you also have to be thinking about the next step, right? So that's also something that we need to manage. And model empathy, suspend judgment, we've covered already. So, as I said, I'm really curious and interested in hearing what other practices and things you've experienced in your role as facilitators. But first, we're going to do a bit of a collective sense making. And for that, we're going to use a shared Google graphic. And, in terms of what we've discussed already in these 3 levels, how have we all been modeling trust in this program, individually, in the process, and for each other? And so if we can just map some of these ideas, we will take just 2-3 minutes, maybe 5 minutes if necessary. And I've added some examples here. But yeah, if you can take a couple of sticky notes and basically add 1 or 2 or 3 points that you feel are relevant to how have we all been modeling trust in this program, we can then go back to that and what we've discussed and do a little bit of group sense making. Let us know if you have any issues accessing the Google Drive. And if you can't input your comments here, just share them on the chat and we will incorporate them. Are you able to access the file? Yes, I can see you joining. Okay, perfect. I can see that some people are finishing their thoughts, so let's give it one more minute. Fantastic. Thank you very much. So we can see some items such as work confidently, you know, let's start with the individual level. Trust for oneself and the work, know your style, communicate it with your co-facilitator, set up expectations, asking their concerns, being audible so that all can hear well. Yes, definitely. Tone of voice, projection of voice, being consistent, engagement, openness. State from the outset that this is a co-learning activity, that feedback is welcomed, asking, sharing their concerns. Yes, identify the why question together. Let them know your assumptions. Fantastic. Work confidently, mutual respect, element of trust and respect, trust, respect, co-learning, openness. Yeah, setting expectations. So thank you very much. This is a wonderful summary, I think, of what we've been discussing. And yeah, what other practices have you experienced that have helped in role modeling trust? Anything else that we haven't covered, maybe? Or any time that you've experienced someone else being a role model as a facilitator for trust building. That could also be, I'm going to stop sharing so that we can see each other. That could also be an example.
I'd like to share, I think one of the role model facilitators I learned from like 10 years ago is that always, whatever change you are making in terms of agenda, the time, and anything that you're going to make in terms of change in the process, you ask them for their opinion. Like, for example, is it okay for us to include this person? Is it okay for us to shift this agenda to the next because this and that, because we see the dynamic and blah, blah, blah. So actually we have decided somehow that we are going to change the sequence, the elements of our process. But by asking them feedback in terms of the process, I think it gives them the impression that we are welcoming their feedback and we are still open. We are not the sole controller of this process. Yes, I think that's something that I keep in mind all the time when I do any facilitation workshop.
Thank you very much, Apichaya. So yeah, I took note of this idea of sort of no surprises, basically, and involving people in the decision making. Yeah, that's excellent. Thank you for sharing. What else have you seen or done that's worked? Yes.
Following what Apichaya said, I made this comment of asking their concerns. But I do it this individually. I try to engage with them separately and to understand their concerns, that, you know, and then once I understand, I encourage them to share together. And then, you know, but I do this before, because sometimes when you are already in the platform, they don't feel ready. They don't know what to share. And then when I do this myself with them apart, I build this, empathy, and I explain that it's really good to share all this together. The others don't know. They need to understand their concerns and obstacles, and we all need to learn from each other. And then when we are in the platform, then we do this exercise, and I don't know, I think it helps to connect with each other, and we stop judging and we start seeing each other differently. Yeah, I just wanted to share this.
Thank you, Barbara. Yes, definitely. Being open about the practices and inviting people into the process is a wonderful trust building practice. Yeah, thank you. Anything else? Anyone? Yes, Lawrence.
Yes, I would like to add the ability to move around the place, like especially in times where you're either moving a microphone or when they are like speaking, for example. I like when it's small groups, I like to do like round tables so that they can always be with one another. And then for purposes of knowing whether people are hearing well or audible, if someone in front is speaking, I'll walk to the back and then possibly say, yes, people here can't hear you. Or if I'm at the front, someone at the back is saying, yes, could you please, to ensure that I'm in connecting with them, being able to move around. That's one of the things that I always try to do. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So physical proximity, moving around, circle, round table setup. Anything else that comes to mind, or something that hasn't worked at all? I think there's an interesting question that I have to say I only experienced it a couple of times in many years of facilitation, which is sometimes the people that are creating the process to be facilitated are not the same that the participants. So there are power dynamics between the people that call you in and the people that are actually going to be the recipients of that facilitation. And knowing when to pull out of a process as a facilitator and saying, I can't be a part of this because this is not going to work, you know, under the terms or circumstances that you want it to work. I had one particular experience about that I should have pulled away and I didn't. And then many of the things that I was expecting to happen ended up happening on the day. And it wasn't great. So yes, Lawrence, go ahead. Oh,
yes, yes, thank you. I wanted to add, like in facilitation, most times they always say you give every person an opportunity to share, but there are chances when you meet like participants, some of whom basically don't want to share, even when you are giving them an opportunity, they basically don't want. So you have, let's say you have 30 people and only 10 or only 10 are the people willing to share. And so you find in some of these situations, you find either you stick with the people engaging, because if I give you opportunity and you keep saying, no, I have nothing to share, what will you do? And some of those odd situations, the actual facilitation of everyone getting the opportunity to participate doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. And to that point, I think there's another element, which is inviting and embedding in the design of a multi-stakeholder collaborative event, not just a process, different ways of participating that may overcome the challenge or difficulty that some people might experience in the plenary, you know, grabbing the microphone type of participation, which is not for everyone. So sometimes we've done, and we've just done a coffee multi-stakeholder workshop in Rwanda, because that's the other thing. There's the few people that grab the microphone and take over the whole space, right? So we've in that case, knowing the audience, we've minimized the plenary time to avoid that situation from happening. And we've done much more around putting flip charts on the wall and people adding sticky notes and giving their input in a different way than just grabbing a microphone and talking. So this is another way of enabling trust, right? Opening different channels for participation. Anything else that feels worth sharing? James, is there anything that you would like to say?
Yeah, sorry, I was struggling with getting into the shared file, but I've put it in the top right, a little box. I mean, I'm perhaps it's my nature and the fact that I've come to facilitation, having been involved at the sort of technical level on many of the topics, but I know that I'm not coming without an opinion to these things, and I know that I want to express my opinion and or at least feed in ideas. So a lesson I've learned is don't be the facilitator. Recognize that you're not, you're not going to be seen as neutral. So I very often, in fact, I can't think of a time recently where I have made myself the main facilitator. I find somebody who knows what process you're trying to take people through, that perhaps doesn't master the technical angles of what you're going into, and make sure that people who can contribute, and it's not just me but other people, are in the room to feed ideas in, knowing that it's not our discussion, it's not us to decide or and can make conclusions, but at least making sure that things don't go offline or are brought back online by feeding ideas into group work and so on. I think it's also important to remember when you have a big meeting and you break into groups, each group has a chair who becomes a facilitator, and they're often not neutral either, and they can very often send things off in a completely wrong direction. And I often in those circumstances will cruise around the group, see where it's going, and if it looks like it's going completely off topic, you kind of raise some questions and feed in some ideas, but you're not facilitating, but it forces the group, if you like, to bring things back into equilibrium. I think a lot of people go to workshops knowing that these are opportunities to push their own ideas, which is correct, that's what they're for, but every discussion has except perhaps a one-on-one, has a facilitator. Somebody becomes the chair and will dominate, and if you aren't careful, it can take things in strange directions.
Yeah, definitely. So that goes back to this idea of shared responsibility, and sometimes even putting the facilitator in the right space that the group needs if the facilitator is not intuitively taking it in that role. And I think, to your point, James, the idea of horizontal and vertical facilitation might put some kind of framing to this, in terms of, okay, maybe we've been in the horizontal facilitation mode for a while. How about if we move, back to the middle, or if we take a more vertical approach as to what are the next converging, diverging, this kind of practices, and to be fair, I think the role that you play is in an ideal world for a facilitator is super helpful. If I'm facilitating a meeting and I have someone like you in, that's amazing, because again, you help also move the group into different energies and types of conversations. So yeah, thank you for sharing. So basically, now we've kind of gathered a number of practices and tools and things that we can do to implement this key idea of the facilitator as a role model for trust. And now we're going to get more granular to your own projects, and we're going to take around 5 minutes. Oops, sorry, I've just done. We're going to take around 5 minutes to go to our individual workspaces. And if you haven't done so in the past sessions, because you were not here, just maybe you can either do this specific slide only or take notes on a notebook. But the invitation is going back to the case study or the intervention in which you wish to apply ECA. What practices on building trust can you actually take back to that case study and initiative? And what other practices could you use that are relevant to your particular project? And I'm going to show you where this is located. So this is the collective one, but you've got, as you know, one file assigned to each one of you. So if you can go to your file with your name on it and basically look for slide. Slide 17 is the reference, 18 is your template. Let's just take 5 minutes, gather some thoughts to go through that thinking process of applying this to your own work, and then we'll come back to our plenary to continue the session. So it's, what time is it? 18 past the hour. So we'll take around until maybe 22, 23 past the hour, maybe 25 if we need more time. We'll take 2 more minutes. And then we will come back to plenary and most likely just take a short break before we continue with the second half of the session. Okay. I'm going to stop sharing now for a minute. See whether it's okay for people to come back to the plenary. And if you haven't managed to finish, that's okay. As we always say, this is just a teaser, in a way, a prompt for us to think a little bit differently. So one thing I wanted to share before we go on a break, if I go back to the presentation, is this idea, key idea number 2, which is this notion that collaboration is one of many options for stakeholders. And Adam Kahane himself, in the video that I shared as part of the pre-work, explains this very well. But basically, in his theories and work, he speaks about whenever we're faced a problematic situation under a multi-stakeholder space, there are 4 ways to deal with problematic situations. And the first question that arises is, can we change the situation? Yes or no? If we can change the situation, yes, let's say, can we affect this change unilaterally? So can we provoke this change unilaterally? If it's yes, then this leads to a unilateral response, which could be force. If we cannot change this effect, if we cannot affect this change unilaterally, then collaboration is obviously a desired option from a multilateral perspective. If we cannot change the situation, can we bear the situation as it is? Yes or no? If we can, then we adapt, which is unilateral. And if we cannot, and we can't change the situation, we can't bear it as it is, then we can opt to exit. This is in a very sort of linear and overly simplistic message. But the key idea behind is that not necessarily collaboration is seen as the response to every scenario. That's basically the message that he's trying to convey. And so when collaboration is not the sort of go-to response, the question is, what do we do, right? How do we position collaboration? And if a stakeholder doesn't want to collaborate, do we force the stakeholder to collaborate? Do we allow the stakeholder to exit? You know, and all of these questions, again, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just the developing the awareness of this process behind, and allowing ourselves to question whether, you know, there's anything that can be done to get a stakeholder to collaborate. There's anything that could be done if a stakeholder doesn't want to participate, you know. So all of this, in a way, also conveys the message that ultimately multi-stakeholder collaboration is a shared responsibility. And as facilitators, we're not superheroes that we can make anything and everything happen. There's a limit to what we can change and influence in the process as well. So with this note, and I'm conscious of time, I would like to invite us to just take a pause, take a break, a 10-minute break, and come back. 38 past the hour. Please don't disconnect your Zoom. Just mute yourselves, leave your cameras off if you want, and we'll come back after this break, and we can continue the conversations on this key idea number 2 and key idea number 3 as well. Everyone, very nice to have you here, and also noticing Arafat and Elizabeth that have joined us today. Hello, can you hear us?
Hello, Sol.
Hi, Elizabeth.
How are you?
Bonjour, ça va?
Ça va bien, ça va bien. C'est vraiment intéressant la discussion. Very
Merci.
interesting discussion.
Thank you, and feel free to join anytime, because we also know that you have a lot of insights and experience as well. So thank you for joining us today. And Arafat, if you can hear us, also feel free to open your mic and introduce yourself to our colleagues whenever you're ready. So thank you. Almost, well, I would say more than half of the session is over already. So we're going to continue now with the third key idea, and then we're going to pause again for a bit of group sense making. And as I said, you know, the third key idea talks about this question that we can ask ourselves as facilitators: how can I be helpful to this group? And there's basically, and this slide is looking very, very weird, so apologies for that. But basically, there are many different ways of facilitating. As we said already intuitively, right? We talked about how each one of us have a specific, unique style. So if we had to make sense of different styles of facilitation, this is just one of many ways of doing it. Adam Kahane speaks about vertical facilitation, which is much more positioning the facilitator as an expert. It's about top-down hierarchy, expertise. It's about coordination, cohesion. It's about converging, yeah, so bringing people to focus. Horizontal facilitation as another polarity, right? We have vertical and horizontal on the other end of the spectrum, is actually about the participation of the group. It's much more bottom up. relying on each participant to making their own individual choices. It's about equality, it's about autonomy, it's about variety. And the important thing here is that each, what this model is trying to convey is that each model has its own pros and cons, yeah, and each model is useful in certain contexts and not useful in others, yeah. So, for example, when we see that the group is a little bit lost, that there are a lot of parallel conversations going on, that no one is listening to each other, vertical facilitation can help bring that converging and that sort of bringing people back to focus. In certain countries, in certain cultures, vertical facilitation might be the way forward as well, because that's what's required in a way, or accepted. Horizontal facilitation can be helpful when some voices are being very dominant, like I shared on that example on the Rwanda Coffee multi-stakeholder workshop. You know, we brought elements of horizontal facilitation by working on the design of the session and avoiding plenary discussions and making it much more about everyone being able to provide input on the flip charts on the walls through sticky notes and voting stickers and all of these kind of things. So, you know, there's no one right or wrong answer. It's what is useful and helpful to that group in their own limitations and in their own potential. And so that is described in terms of this model as transformative facilitation, which is a sort of cycling. Adam Kahane speaks about cycling back and forth between vertical and horizontal facilitation. And it's about looking at the good of the system as a whole and the different parts. It's about removing obstacles rather than trying to make things happen. So using vertical facilitation when parallel conversations and lack of focus is becoming an obstacle, and using horizontal facilitation when power dynamics are becoming an obstacle. It's both equitable and hierarchy based, and it's trying to maximize the benefits of each facilitation model and minimizing the downsides of each facilitation model. So this is a little bit how it looks like. As we said, you know, cycling back from vertical to horizontal in a sort of pattern or as needs be. Before we go into the next piece of practical work, I'm wondering if you have any sort of insights, experiences yourself of how you've done this, or any challenges that you see in doing this. How do you make sense of this information that we've just shared? What comes up? Robert, would you like to share anything if you are there? Can we invite you to share? Yes, Elizabeth, please go ahead while, oh, there you are, Robert. Okay, go ahead, Robert, and then we go to Elizabeth.
Yeah, practicing the vertical facilitation, sometimes it is good to have somebody from the group that give us a delegation to facilitate the event or multi-stakeholder meetings, because sometimes they have the a more better position to voice out the certain authoritative voice in the process, and then we can use that as a basis to move the process going to the direction that is planned to achieve the objective. So usually I use this without exercising too much power from my side as a facilitator, in that if the process is getting very loose, or maybe we are having a very difficult person in the room, something like that.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you very much for sharing your experience. Elizabeth, yes, over to you.
Okay. I will go in French.
Sure.
Okay.
No worries. We will try our best to capture the essence of your message. Go ahead.
Ok. Lorsque vous voulez jouer un rôle de facilitateur, il faut rester dans une position de facilitateur avec les deux aspects, aspect vertical et aspect horizontal. Par expérience, pour l'aspect horizontal, vous avez besoin de donner l'exemple. Vous avez besoin de contribuer au même niveau que ceux que vous voulez encadrer. Et ça leur permet de prendre l'habitude. Maintenant, quand vous êtes dans une position verticale, vous donnez des conseils. Vous donnez des conseils stratégiques, vous donnez des conseils techniques qui leur permettent de renforcer leur savoir-faire, leur savoir-être, leur expérience. Donc, si nous devons réussir dans cette collaboration constructive et éducative, nous devons avoir les deux modèles de facilitateurs. Voilà ce que je peux dire par expérience. Et lorsque vous êtes dans les deux positions, les gens ont confiance en vous, ils peuvent vous aborder facilement, ils peuvent vous exprimer leurs problèmes et ils peuvent vous amener dans leurs réflexions. Vous réfléchissez avec eux, vous trouvez les solutions ensemble et ça renforce la collaboration.
Merci. Merci, Elizabeth. Thank you for sharing. And yeah, there's definitely different, from what I can understand from what you're saying, there are different qualities that are required for a vertical facilitation and a horizontal facilitation, as you very well pointed. And what I heard from you as well is that there is this idea that collaboration, that horizontal facilitation is kind of more conducive to collaboration. And yes, I think there is an element of truth in that, certainly. And sometimes the downside of the horizontal facilitation and what can jeopardize the collaborative processes is that there's a lot of stagnation around, you know, getting everyone aligned, getting people to agree, and you many times have stakeholders and actors, and many times ourselves as well, you know, eager to kind of go into the action, agree what the next steps are. That's why they talk about this cycling back and forth, right? And sort of bringing in both, not necessarily in an equitable manner, you know, as much vertical as horizontal, but making the right mix that works for what needs to be achieved and the group and the context and so on. So thank you for sharing. Anyone else would like to share anything from your experience, questions, reflections?
Maybe I'll just share my reflection and some questions for everyone. Because when I saw the framework between vertical and horizontal, I think it goes back to what I had in my mind between the dialogue and action. And oftentimes we are thinking of like building trust to having dialogue, making sure everyone is feeling safe to discuss, and everyone has equal power to discuss whatever they have in terms of their standpoint, their interest. And sometimes when we facilitate dialogues repeatedly in the process, sometimes there are this kind of dialogue fatigue, and sometimes we need to come into a certain like conclusion for the next step, like you said. So it's like a debate in my mind oftentimes, like how do we balance between making sure the dialogue is inclusive and it's ongoing and the trust has been maintaining, but and also those dialogue deliver something tangible so that people know that this kind of dialogue delivers some outcomes. And this kind of debate is actually when you work in an organization, in a project, you often have something to deliver, which is dialogue of the trust is something that, of course, you can write that we will trust through this dialogue and blah, 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 but it's difficult to measure, it's difficult to illustrate. So I think the vertical and horizontal and also like the mix between the two give the clear, I mean, concrete process of how things should be done in order to maintain the trust building process and making sure that people will be in the momentum of this dialogue because they see the change that is common to everyone, is a share value, share vision for everyone. So maybe just to put out this question to everyone, like, do you have this kind of debate in your head when you try to facilitate and try to deliver some action, like collaborative action? Thank you.
Who would like to share their experience and thoughts on this to respond to Apichaya's reflection and question?
I have to leave, but I will say something. I don't know if I will respond to your question, but I think when, in my experience, when you see that things are not going for collaboration, I think what has helped me is to, in line what she said, to be very transparent and to really express it, you know, to say, look, we are going into this direction and I don't see that we are going to collaboration, or it looks like, to really present it with this transparency. And then I left the decision for them, no, to decide and to say also, look, maybe you need more time to reflect about it. We are in touch. We are all connected. We don't have to force it. We can reconnect easily. But now you have to decide, you know, and to really leave them the responsibility, because sometimes in my experience, this type of, you know, arrête, on dit en français, help them to really understand that we are making an effort and we want to do something, and then you know, they connect with themselves, and most of the time they come back and say, oh, sorry, yes, maybe, you know, we were not doing right, let's try again, you know. So yeah, I just wanted to share this with you, but I have to go, sorry.
Okay.
It's really
Thank
amazing.
Yeah.
Continue, enjoy it. I will follow you in the recording, and
Thank you.
yeah, we'll be in touch.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Barbara. Enjoy. Take care.
Thank you.
Yes, I would add to what Barbara was mentioning, that to your point around dialogue fatigue and sort of how to manage that open process of dialogue, you know, the diversity of participatory methods can help. As we said, you know, not just having people in an open mic type of setting, but also other settings. The framing the space for dialogue and framing the expectations and manage the expectations, again, that successful collaboration is not necessarily just to or fundamentally about getting everyone to agree on everything, but rather it's about working with the difference. You know, how do we work? And maybe dialogue is the space where we show up in our differences, and then the convergence comes to, well, we've had a dialogue, we've shared where we are. How do we converge then without having to convince each other? And I go back to that story about the elephant that we shared before, right? People having a different idea of what the elephant is based on the part of the elephant that they're touching. I think this is very similar, right? Whomever is touching the leg will think that it's a tree. Whoever is touching the trunk will think it's a snake. How do we then build the elephant together in that context? So that's where I think, for me, what's always been very helpful is this iteration of different ways and methods, and being sometimes very clear about the fact that we could spend hours, we could spend days talking about this. We just have to provide some kind of sense of delimitation of space in order to move forward. Yeah, but it's hard. It's one of the difficult, most difficult things, I think, to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Apichaya. So we're moving now towards the last bit of the session today, and I would like to invite you all then to, in the spirit of converging, we've been in these sessions together. We've been doing an exercise of bringing concepts, ideas, experience. We've talked about so many different things, different tools. So I would like to offer this final hour for a kind of converging, not necessarily horizontal facilitation at all, vertical facilitation at all, but this sense, this idea of converging and bringing things together. And we're going to use an alternative technique, something that is not necessarily, the traditional facilitation techniques that you will see, but you can also get to experiment it here today and see if you want to use it as a facilitator yourself. And this technique is called visualization or visualizing, which is a way of engaging different parts of ourselves that's not just the brain and the thinking mind. So I'm going to ask you please to just sit comfortably wherever you are. Find yourself a comfortable position. You can keep your eyes open or you can keep your eyes closed. That's up to you. And for a couple of minutes, I'm just going to ask you to basically, you can look at the screen if you want, and this image of a field, but just follow my voice and try to be present to my voice. So when you visualize you focus on something specific and you hold it in your mind, trying to imagine your outcome becoming a reality. So these kind of exercises are known to be useful and helpful in tapping different ways of knowing, calming the anxious mind, the busyness of every day, and inviting other senses to help us imagine and create the future. So we're going to now start connecting with our breathing. So trying to relax and breathing slowly and deeply. Focus on your breath for several seconds, inhaling and exhaling slowly until you find a comfortable, natural rhythm. Once you've found that breathing that feels comfortable, that position on your chair that feels comfortable, Visualize the group of people you are wanting to bring together, to work with and collaborate. Imagine them all together in a room, daylight coming in from the many large windows. The soft breeze is cooling the room, making it comfortable and just the perfect temperature. There are fresh, colorful pots with live flowers, bringing life and nature into the room. Imagine yourself walking around that room, and as you do, you start looking at each one of those people clearly. You see their bodies moving, their facial expressions. Some of them are smiling, making eye contact with one another, talking to each other, maybe enjoying a cup of coffee or tea, a glass of water. Some may be in small groups of 3 or 4, just chatting. Others might be in pairs. Everyone looks relaxed, calm, and happy. You look around and you notice the buzzing sound of the conversations happening in the room. And as you notice it, you hear that buzz. And as you hear it, you begin to relax again, reminding yourself again to breathe deeply, slowly, in and out, in and out. And as you focus in your breath again, the buzz of the conversation becomes a distant sound. And images of what you are hoping to achieve with this group, with these people, what you hope to see happening, where you can get to by the end of the workshop, start emerging. Hold those images. What do you see? And as you hold your images, the buzz of the conversation changes. And you notice that. You notice that change in the sound. It becomes more irregular as people begin to move. You look around and you see everyone walking towards their chairs and tables. It seems everyone is getting ready to start. And so the movement of the group sets you in motion too. You begin to walk around the room to take your place in the room. And as you do that, you bring one last time your attention to your breath. You walk slowly, and with each step, you feel how the sole of each foot gradually touches the ground as you walk and lifts again. You find your position in the room, and with a final deep, deep breath, both feet grounded on the floor, you find yourself ready to start as well. So slowly now, come back to the plenary, open your eyes if you'd close them. And in this spirit of reflection and visualizing, we're going to open our individual workspaces and just take some notes of what did you see? What can you do to make it happen? And what else do you need? So we're going to continue in this reflective space, and then we can come back and ignite a conversation again. And so this basically looks like slide 19. In your visualization, just take some notes. What did you see? What can you do to make it happen? And what else do you need? We'll take 5 minutes and then we'll come back to plenary. Let's give it 2 more minutes and then we'll come back to plenary. Okay. If you're happy to just come back to the group and we can start some sharing. So the first of all, as a practice, visualization is, again, this idea of playing with different energies, different prompts, different ways of engaging people and different parts of how our brain works. Just another tool in the toolbox. But I'm really interested to hear what did you see when you were visualizing? And I'm gonna add the questions to the chat. What did you see? What can you do to make it happen? And what else do you need? So, Lawrence, would you like to start?
Yes, thank you. So I envisioned a clean environment, and with so many happy young people, and lots of foods in the market. And of course, what needs to be done for that to happen is to behave sustainably and be cautious of the environment in terms of the way we farm, the way we behave in terms of disposal, in terms of managing and protecting the environment. And the additional things I would like to do is to share with the stakeholders and the different people in the communities of where I work, also behave like sustainably, and to continuously design programs that are responsive and of the future that I would like to see, and have deliberate policies from government and so many actors to ensure that that future is possible. That's all from me.
Thank you very much, Lawrence. Beautiful, thank you.
Yes.
Robert, how about you? What did you manage to visualize, and what can you do to make it happen? What is your ideal multi-stakeholder collaboration event, and what else do you need?
Actually, I saw something else.
Oh, very good. I'm interested. Yes. What did you see?
Yeah. I saw several of people, facilitators, we can call it that way, gathering in or convening in a room, and they talk to each other about their work, and they agree on something that they will support each other in the future by continuing sharing, learning, and experience. And everyone is agree to make themselves open when somebody from the group ask for assistance in doing or facilitating other group within the scope of their work. So I'm not sure that this have a directly link to the multi-stakeholder facilitation, but that's what I picture during the exercise. Thank you.
Fantastic. It's what helps and what comes up, right, in a way. So wonderful that you were opening to letting that happen and emerge. And I feel that speaks a lot to, from our work as conveners, as facilitators. What I felt as I was listening to you was this presence of that desire and need to be also held and sustained by other facilitators, by people around us, because facilitation sometimes can be a very heavy lifting on one individual if it's just yourself. So thank you for bringing that to our awareness, how as facilitators we also need to take care of ourselves. We also need to make sure that we are supported and that we have that wonderful space that you described. So thank you. Uchi, how about you?
Yes, thank you. I see a very good environment within these people. I see cooperation within them, and I see hope. And in this hope, there was some element of change. They want to change, and also humility as well. I've seen a lot of progress, self-control, and also self-fulfillment within them. Then what can I do to make it happen? I saw that planning should be one of it, of trying to carry them along as a facilitator, having a clear objectives, and also take yourself to be giving them services, that is services rendering, and the co-creation, understanding, and the cooperation. What else do I need? I need knowledge, some guidelines in order to pull this through, also funds. Then we have to co-design together, collaborate, and then converge our ideas together in order to achieve a goal. Thank you.
Thank you, Uchi. What a wonderful visualization. And I love how you brought in this very human experience to it, beyond the process and the idea of hope, humility, as drivers for change, and how planning is very important. Because what you described was an enabling environment for true collaboration, for true change. And therefore, for that to happen, there needs to be very careful planning to create that enabling environment. So facilitation, bringing back what I heard from you to what we are discussing today, facilitation doesn't just take place during the event. There's a lot of facilitation that takes place before the event happens, in the way that we design it, in the way that we plan it, in how we visualize it, in how we co-create it with others. The event as such is just 20% of the work. The work is happening before. The 80% of the work is happening before. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. Apichaya, anything from your side?
I think I see everybody listen to each other, and also the leader listen to women, youth, supporting in terms of technology, visualization to the elderly participant. I also see people in power willing to take up the role of facilitating, not just influencing the decision. And I also see participants who, for the first time meeting in this event, is continuing to have their chats, their talks over coffee and dinner, and even after the event finish. And what can I do to make it happen? I think similar to what Uchi has shared, the previous work is also important. So I think stakeholder mapping is very important. You need to know who is coming and what in what position, in what are the power relation between all the participants to the events are, and maybe you can imagine what could be the scenario that could happen during the event, and make sure that I have a clear sense of purpose for this intervention. I often have this long, like overnight discussion with my co-facilitator, sometimes over coffee, sometimes over a card games. But the question that we keep discussing over and over is why we are doing this, what are the purpose of this intervention that we are doing together. And I think last thing that I can do is to carry a toolbox that is full of techniques and tools that I can pick and choose during the event. Like you said, multiple tools will help you to go through this facilitation process. And what else do I need? I think I need many more co-facilitators, many more colleagues that can support each other in the process, not only for that event, but like colleagues like you guys who can share your experience, who can have some thoughts on this kind of practice together. So I think this is very, very helpful. Not only just have the tools, but have someone who have the experience share with you along the process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Apichaya. Wonderful sharing. And also thank you for adding to our also awareness, this idea of knowing who is going to be in the room, making sure that we map the stakeholders, but also that we know them, right? And I remember in one of the previous ECA deep dives, one of the participants had this amazing realization, which I thought, oh gosh, this is once you say it, it's very obvious, but actually it is a fundamental realization. So she said, I've just realized that I wasn't seeing my stakeholders as human beings. I was seeing them as elements that were part of the process, as pieces of a puzzle that I needed to fix, right? And sort of bringing in this humanity back to them. You know, they are people. I need to know them. I need to connect with them, see eye to eye with them, you know, and she basically went back and the following week when she came, she said, I saw them and I had a conversation with them and I told them, you know, I feel like we need to connect more as people, as human beings, you know, over coffee, just have a chat. I don't know who you are. If you have a family, what do you do? And it is very obvious and simple, but actually it's so true, right? That we become so entrenched in the process that we forget about the human aspect of it all. And so thank you for bringing that also today to the table. Elizabeth, anything you would like to share from your side?
Okay, as a colleague say, I think it is those important things we can take in account to make our stakeholder engage to the dialogue, collaboration, and we need to counsel, more counsel, share experience, and more guidance to make them change practice, integrate innovation, etc. I validate how Apichaya said, what Apichaya said, and I agree that we need to still in action collaborative action, sharing action, awareness raising action to guide them.
Yes, thank you, Elizabeth. And certainly, you know, this idea of bringing in more counsel, more sharing experience, more guidance. This morning, I was having I was also facilitating a session with the Indonesia team. They're working on this upcoming multi-stakeholder collaborative workshop on their National Action Plan for Sustainable Palm Oil. And one of the ladies who's a very experienced facilitator, she's been facilitating district level dialogues. She was saying, we failed so many times and so much at so many different levels, you know, in terms of how do we create sustained change? How do we engage stakeholders? And then it became a conversation, you know, how do we learn from those failures and how much there is to be learned from those failures. So also, you know, in terms of the counseling and sharing experience and more guidance, which goes back to the point around bringing the humanity back to the process. We try so hard to make it work that sometimes it becomes too artificial, too manicured. If we bring back that humanity, then there's space for not knowing what to do, not knowing how to react. And so there is space for providing guidance. It's okay to feel overwhelmed. It's okay to not know what to do, how to respond. It's okay to not have the answer. That's why we're here together. You know, this prompting, rather than all just sort of being there, pretending that we understand everything that's being said, that we know where to go and what to do. And then obviously that, you know, the dialogue and the conversation stays at that sort of more artificial level. So yeah, definitely more counsel, more sharing experience, more guidance, and more, you know, humanity and humility into it.
And in addition, what we need to do is not to come with external counsel. We need to accompany them to make good choice, right choice, because sometimes they have experience, they have practice, but they don't have the mindset to choose the best in the circumstances. No, we need to help them to make good choice through what they have as background, experience, etc. We need also to support. Sometimes they need resources, they need a small mean to enhance their practice, adoption, what they know, what they have as experience.
Yes, indeed. This idea of accompanying and shepherding, we've been talking a lot about shepherding as well in other spaces. So thank you. Thank you very much. And we're getting to the final bits of the session. And so I wanted to continue by sharing an example. I think that might, you know, in the spirit of converging again, we've kind of zoomed out, you know, with the visualization, and now we can zoom in into how could this potentially translate into a concrete example of an agenda of a multi-stakeholder collaborative. In this case, event, because it's the easiest to share. But again, you know, don't think of facilitation of multi-stakeholder processes as just facilitation of events. You know, it's much broader than that. But just to share, you know, an example, you know, so the work that we're doing with Indonesia at the moment is about how do we strengthen collaboration so that the implementation of the National Action Plan on Sustainable Palm Oil gets accelerated. And so we started thinking about what is the idea, the hook, what is the shared vision that we can use without naming it, to bring people together. And so we came up with this idea of legacy, of building legacy of sustainable palm oil production in Indonesia. So that is a kind of the theme, the topic, building legacy, because we understand that in the cultural context, this idea of connecting generations and sort of leaving your own mark in a process is important. And this is just the day one of a 4-day process. So this is just for the directors at a government, national government level, and with also other stakeholders from the private sector, NGOs, civil societies, and farmer cooperatives. So we started, we came up with this idea of having a welcome and check-in with a big circle, personal introductions, and then the check-in question is, what is your personal connection to the National Action Plan? How do you connect personally? What inspires you personally about that, that plan and that vision? Then a quick presentation on the current state of situation and the progress required. So to build a case and the urgency for effective collaborative action. Then an introduction to ECA, to effective collaborative action. And we were going to run an interactive session, some kind of, well, we put here a building game or the Sustainable Development Goals game, and then share some key ideas, key concepts, and the 10 key principles of effective collaborative action, which we've covered here in the past modules. And then we thought about, okay, let's build a future together and start applying effective collaborative action to progress the implementation of the National Action Plan and focusing on understanding the system. And as we said, you know, we were trying to transcend the idea of just having plenary discussions. And so we came up with this facilitation technique, which is called World Cafe, which is basically tables of people working through specific topics and then rotating. And so one group would work on what is the vision of success, another group on the opportunities, another group on challenges and barriers, and then another group on what is needed to progress. And so the idea is that each group will take 30 minutes to capture the main ideas around each one of these topics, and then there would be some kind of plenary sharing from each group to the rest of the audience. And then we would move into capacity building, so developing a systems mindset and systems leadership practices. So bringing in these lenses of systems thinking and systems leadership. And then, you know, bringing that back to the practice, and we don't have it here on the slide. But the last bit of the day is, you know, how do we apply this? How do we bring this systems-based approach to the vision of success, the opportunities, the challenges, and what is needed? And then the second and the third day, it's all about, okay, how do we co-create the approach? How do we take collaborative action? So building the roadmap of how are we going to manage this? Who's going to lead on which actions? Are there going to be working groups? How are we going to keep each other accountable? What is the roadmap for this year, for next year? You know, converging, right? Getting much more concrete. So this is just one idea. It doesn't have to be the idea. It's, as we said, we build it based on the needs and the context of Indonesia and this particular group. So what we are going to ask you now is just to take 10 minutes in pairs for a final discussion around, you know, given what we've discussed and this agenda that I've just shared with you, how do you see your next intervention in this case study or for any multi-stakeholder collaborative process that you might be working on? How would a high-level agenda look like, and what are the key elements that you need to think and bear in mind? And just, you know, a very agile, informal pair conversation. And if you wish to do so, in your individual work plan slide, in your individual Google workspace, you have a slide where you can take some notes if you wanted to. If you are happy to just have the conversation, that's fine as well. But Federica has just shared the questions on the chat so that you can have them available. And yes, Fede, if you can send us to the breakout groups for
Yes.
10 minutes is okay.
Thank you, Sole. Would you like also to be part of it, just to understand how to split it?
I mean, if people
because
are,
there is a trios, there is yeah.
Okay, then yes, let's just do it pair work.
Okay, thank you. Yeah,
I'm happy to take part.
Yes.
All here. I can see also that Lawrence came in and there were some connectivity issues, but that's okay. So yeah, just maybe we can take the last 5 minutes to share anything that came up in the group conversations. So what did you notice in terms of what elements were you trying to bring to your agenda? New things maybe that you hadn't thought of before? What surprised you? Robert, would you like to start?
Yeah, actually, we just start sharing, then suddenly the time's already up. So I recap several points that Elizabeth shared to us. How then we can move to support the stakeholder that we are working with to practice the knowledge, etc. But unfortunately, there's a situation sometimes that we don't have available technical or financial resources to support that. And then that's when I remember my experience in the past. So we just maybe we just can use the our power to convene if we don't have any specific financial or technical resources, but using our maybe organization or office facilities to convene people and let them then contribute into to the issue that we are facing as well. Yeah, the resource constraint. Sometimes it works, but sometimes it's not. So be ready for what will be the outcome of that process. But the power to convene is something that quite useful in times when we don't have any specific funding support for that. Even using the regular office operational support to move the agenda forward. It could also trigger somebody else's contribution to that.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Robert. Yeah. Who else would like to share what came up? What elements did you include in that agenda, or what did you struggle with, if anything? I know there were some ins and outs with the technical challenges. So yeah, but basically the purpose of the exercise is to try to get us to land the ideas that we've been working into a concrete example of how we would integrate this in the design of an intervention. So yeah, Uchi, is there anything that you would like to share?
I think you're muted. No, thank you.
I had problem with internet. I could not join any group.
That's okay. No worries. I think we are. I think we're right at that point where we can just basically close our session today and our program really. And it's nice that we can get to have a few minutes to do so properly. And so, yeah, in a way, from my side, thank you very much to all of you for your continuous engagement, your continuous participation, sharing your questions, experiences, knowledge. So rich, such a rich experience and such a treat to get to know you and get to know your work. And I'm here available, just, feel free to connect with me. We are planning on running alumni events of this program, most likely after the summer, the North Hemisphere summer. So yeah, we'll hopefully in September have one session that we can come back to, and host this kind of conversations in a more regular basis. So yeah, in the spirit of checkout, then I'm going to pass it on to Federica this time.
Thank you, Sole. And first of all, I want to thank you for the amazing facilitation, as always, and also great companionship, I would say. And I would like to thank you all for your active participation. It is a great group that really put an effort throughout the whole course. We knew that it is demanding in terms of time as well as effort, but thank you very much. I would bring with me all your insights and experience. And over to you, Elizabeth.
I am very, very happy to participate to this discussion today. And as learning, I know that we need to continue to reinforce what we are doing in our day-to-day work, and we need to facilitate reflection, force, and adapt to accompany our stakeholders. I enjoy the knowledge sharing, the classroom reflection, and I like that we need to continue to share our experience, what we are doing in our country, in our work site. And the answer will be to reflect on how to support practice. How do we support practice? But because sometimes our stakeholder want to practice, but they don't have resources. Resources means to practice. How to help them, to accompany them, to support them to practice. It will be the else element we can put in reflection for next time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Definitely, that is the key question, right? How can we support practice so that change can happen on the ground? Thank you. Lawrence?
Yes, of course. I would like to, first of all, of course, appreciate the facilitators, Sole, together with the support of Federica. Thanks so much for the knowledge or for the platform where we've been able to share a lot. The participants who are on all through, thank you very much for this. And yes, I've learned quite a lot. I've learned different strategies of managing power dynamics, strategies of facilitating, and a few ideas that I can carry to my box to be able to continue the work that I do well. So I would like at this point to pass the mic to Uchi.
Thank you very much, Lawrence. Thank you so much. And thank you for your very, very active participation too.
All right, thank you.
Yes, Uchi, over to you.
Thank you for this wonderful organization. The facilitators have really learned a lot in this particular program of today. What I liked, the topic I like most, it's about a vertical facilitation and the horizontal, then overlapping of there is transformative. I'm sorry to say, is very important because I've seen that in many of the programs. It depends on the context and the environment you find yourselves, especially because I discovered that, for example, when you are doing training of trainers, which is somehow a sophisticated training, such a vertical approach is being introduced. And when you go to the field with a participant that have a low knowledge, maybe they are non-literate and literates, the horizontal facilitation is really, it works a lot. So sometimes you combine then to see the difference, that is transformative one, to see the difference of somebody who is coming to give the program so that they will pay attention. They will pay attention. It's really, really important. I've enjoyed a whole lot of the program. I've involved myself. It's been deeply rich and more experience in order to extend it to any sector. And I will also request, maybe if we can have, is there any possible way of having certificates on this program of participation? That is another thing I want to ask. Really, thank you. I may really like to be included in other subsequent activities. I understand that this particular novel organization is also in Nigeria. If there is anything that can be included, I will like. And the solo, I've emailed you my own proposal thesis. PhD, I don't know you have seen it. Thank you. Hello?
Sorry, what's on mute? Thank you very much, Uchi, for your wonderful participation, sharing. Thank you for sharing as well your doctoral proposal, and yeah, for being so open and so making this as such an enriching learning experience. And finally, over to you, Robert.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I would like to thank both Sole and Fede for organizing and facilitating this course. It's really neat collaboration between the two of you. I learned a lot about the from the content of this course, but I learned more about from the way you organize and facilitate us during this several session. Yeah, so thank you for that. And also for the opportunity to join, and also to all participants. Thank you for be part of this as well. Lawrence, I already accepted your invitation to connect. It's already started to build connection, and maybe I don't know what will be developed after this. Yeah, but I'm open to that. So again, thank you very much for this learning opportunity. I hope we can still be in touch each other, and let's see where the future take us.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Robert, for also participating, joining in, sharing your experience and your wonderful words. And thank you, everyone. We will ask you, if possible, one last thing. We will send all of the materials and everything, and as well as a post-program survey, because all of this feedback, it's so helpful and useful to collect it from you and from everyone, so that we can keep the work active and alive. So thank you so much. And yes, we will see each other again, most likely in September. We are going to get started on planning those alumni sessions. And yes, we can send a certificate of attendance as well. So thank you, Uchi, for the reminder on that.
Halo, sudah saya
Hope you have a wonderful rest of the day, and I'll see you around in the community of practice or over email and in the next sessions. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Welcome.
Thank you everyone.
Thank
Have a
you.
great day, afternoon,
All right.
evening.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.